everyone, and welcome back to my channel. My name is Ajua and I hope this video finds you well. If you are new to this place, please consider subscribing, and to all my returning subscribers, thank you so much for your support and welcome back. This is yet another video where I compare two similar fragrances and give you my opinion as to which one is the better option. That is, if you have not already picked some of these fragrances and you are thinking about picking them. My conclusions about these fragrances are solely based on my experiences. They are not cast in stone. They are simply how I feel about these similar fragrances. I would love to say thank you to Ajele for sending over some very beautiful earrings, one of which I'm wearing today. Ajele is a Ghanaian-owned jewelry business. They offer very creative, artsy, bold statement-making jewelry, and that is what I love about them. Whenever I want to just, bare my face, be without any wig, and make a statement with my, accessories, I prefer to go for pieces like this. They are very beautiful, statement-making. They are based here in Ghana, but they ship worldwide. They have very quality handmade accessories, so if you are interested, please check the description for their shop. Before I start the video, I want to draw attention to a fragrance that I have, chanced upon to be quite close to North Stag Quad by Paris Corner. This has been marketed as a dupe for Afternoon Swim by Louis Vuitton, and I've done the comparison. I don't think they really smell alike, but I recently got Jomalone's Lime, Basil, and Mandarin. What I have realized is that North Stag by Paris Corner is very similar to Jomalone's Lime, Basil, and Mandarin as compared to the OG Afternoon Swim. It doesn't really go to the exact same territory, but these two in particular smell so much alike, so I'm just drawing attention. If you're on the market for North Stag and you already have Lime and Basil and Mandarin by Jomalone, and you're not finding North Stag because it's usually out of stock, then you don't necessarily have to worry yourself about finding North Stag Quad by Paris Corner. To me, I find Lime, Basil, and Mandarin by Jomalone close to North Stag Expression the Fourth as compared to the Afternoon Swim, which I feel North Stag is about 50 or 60% similar, so that is just by the way. The first pair of fragrances I'm going to discuss in this list are going to be Nayel Queen by Arabiyat and then Rifaaqat by Paris Corner. I don't have them in full bottles, but I have just decants. I've been testing these two fragrances for the past 2 weeks. I don't have full bottles of them, so the decants that I have, I believe, are already macerated. What I love most about these two fragrances is that I feel they are top tier. Honestly, they are very top tier. It feels like a lot of effort were put in the making of these two fragrances. They are great. However, I have a feeling I'm going to pick up a bottle of Nayel Queen by Arabiyat simply because it feels very divine. There's this very balsamic quality about it, which I love, plus that sort of, lemony aspect of it. I simply find Nayel Queen divine. There's something quite, balsamic, quite calming, quite elegant. It doesn't come across as rough to me in any way, in as much as Rifaaqat also doesn't come across as, rough to me in any way. To me, Nayel Queen seems slightly Middle Eastern because it has that sort of incense nuance in it. There's an accord which feels very incensey. I still get it in the Rifaaqat, but it's not as pronounced, in the Nayel Queen. And I think that is one of the major differences between these two fragrances. That sort of incensey accord, it puts me in the mind frame of being in a very elegant, church or mosque where they are burning some incense, and I love that for Nayel Queen. In this case, although my preference is going to be Nayel Queen, I still highly recommend Rifaaqat because I feel it's a very phenomenal, great, smooth, elegant, balsamic, nothing harsh about these two fragrances. I think they were very well made. The next set of fragrances I have here are not going to be two, but they're going to be three, and these are going to be Dolores Parfum by Fragrance World, Maison Alhambrah Kismet for men, and the third fragrance is also going to be from Maison Alhambra, and that is going to be the Tux. In my opinion, although Kismet for men and then Dolores are duping entirely different fragrances, this one duping Decadence by Marc Jacobs, whilst Kismet Angel and the Tux are duping Tuxedo by YSL. However, they come across as very similar to me. When you put these three fragrances together, I don't have the Tux, but I have sampled it several times. If I didn't have Kismet for Men by Alhambra and I had come across the Tux, I think I would have picked it up, over Kismet for Men. Although they are both marketed towards men, they feel very unisex to me. And the fact that both fragrances also smell so much like Dolores by Fragrance World. Between Kismet for Men and Dolores, I find Dolores to be much more intense with the plum, the vanilla, and the woods, whilst this one is much more area. There is a bubbly sort of quality to this that I don't find in this. In addition, Dolores seemed to come across as a little more sweeter as compared to Kismet for men. When it comes to the Tux by Alhambra, I find it so much closer to Dolores by Fragrance World because it is much more thicker, much more richer as compared to Kismet for men, which feels a little more diluted. You know, it still has a punch, but it seems slightly watered down as compared to Dolores and then the Tux. These three fragrances are very similar. They come across as very interchangeable. You know, you can own one of them and you will not feel the need to own the others. But to me, I feel like the Tux has some oomph about it. The Tux feels much more warmer, much more intense, much more thicker as compared to Kismet for men. However, in comparison to Dolores, I feel the Tux, you know, and this one are quite at par. Among those three fragrances, my number one recommendation is going to be the Tux by Alhambra, followed by Dolores by Fragrance World, and then the third position is going to be Kismet Angel for Men by Alhambra. The next pair of fragrances are going to be Qaeed Fursan by Lattafa and then Nouf by Paris Corner. These two fragrances are basically the same fragrances. In these two fragrances, there is very little to contrast. You know, they smell so much alike, about 95 to 98%, you know, similarity to me. There is very little to differentiate between these two. What I have realized is that Qaeed Fursan seem to have just a little upper hand when it comes to the intensity of the pineapple. Nouf also does that. However, I just feel like there's a little intensity when it comes to Qaeed Fursan as compared to Nouf. But you know, basically, there is very little differences between these two. When it comes to longevity, they are almost at par. When it comes to the quality, they are not the best, you know, of Lattafa's or Middle Eastern fragrances. They are quite screechy. Even after having Qaeed Fursan for over a year, I still feel it needs a little much more time to smoothen out. Nouf, I didn't get an original bottle. This is a decant, which I believe has sat for some time, and I've also allowed it to sit for at least an additional 2 weeks. It's also not, you know, the smoothest. Both fragrances are not the smoothest. I feel like quality-wise, they are at par. Performance-wise, they are at par. Filling up a room, they both do that. I also feel the smoky accord in the Qaeed Fursan is a little more pronounced as compared to Nouf, you know. And even with that, after the first few hours, 2 to 3 hours, you don't, you know, seem to find those very major differences between these two fragrances. In this case, what I would recommend is pick any of these fragrances based on their price point. Whatever is much more cheaper or much more affordable, I think you can go for any of them because they're going to give you the same experiences, the same performance, the same longevity. Just that Qaeed Fursan feels slightly more intense than Nouf, especially at the beginning. But when they begin to dry down in the second, third, you know, fourth hour, they sort of, you know, fizzle out to be the same thing. For the first time on this channel, I'm going to pick Yara over something, and that something is going to be Kissa Pink by Paris Corner. I've had this decant for about 2 weeks. I'm struggling to get the nitty-gritty differences between these two. It is slightly there, but not like that much. However, although Yara is not my favorite fragrance, Kissa Pink fails to even meet the mark of Yara, in my opinion. I enjoy this fragrance better on my daughter now. I don't personally use or gravitate towards Yara, but I wanted to try Kissa Pink, and I guess for like at least let me give Yara its flowers because it beats something else, in my opinion. I don't think Kissa Pink is that bad, you know, it doesn't come across as a bad fragrance to me at all, just like Yara. However, one of my major issues with Yara was the potency. I feel it's quite light, you can hardly smell it, it doesn't really last that long. Then I come across Kissa Pink, which I feel is, you know, far less superior. I feel the lasting power of this one is quite abysmal. I spray it within 30 minutes. I don't smell it, you know, anymore. At least this one will give me about an hour or two, you know, after maceration. But this one, for the past 2 weeks that I've been trying to test it, I just spray it, and then within the next hour, I have to really be searching for it to smell it, you know. The performance is quite, you know, poor. Yara is quite light, airy, and fluffy, and I think it's not like, you know, meant to be a very strong fragrance. Maybe that is how it was meant to be. It feels like Yara, but more watered down and not as creamy, in my opinion. Yara feels much more creamy, fluffy. You get very similar nuances, you know, with Kissa Pink, but I guess for like Yara is much more superior as compared to Kissa Pink. So if you already have Yara, I don't think there is any rush to go and get Kissa Pink. The next two fragrances are going to be Kima by Lattafa and then Bint by Zaafaran. These two fragrances, I think I did the comparison not too long ago in one of my very similar videos, and in that video I said I would pick Bint over Kima, and I still stand by that. I've had this for about almost a year now. This also almost a year now. Bint has always seemed like a better quality as compared to Kima. I've been waiting on this to macerate. I'm not the one who put the dent in this. I have given this one to my younger sister who now uses it, and I guess borrowed it for this video. However, after about a year, I think it has improved. It used not to smell so much like Good Girl by Carolina Herrera. It didn't really seem to give me that impression initially, although it was compared to that. Bint gave me that from the jump start. However, it has improved, it really smells like that, maybe about 80%. I will still choose Bint over Kima simply because this one feels so much closer to Carolina Herrera's Good Girl. It is a very good quality fragrance. It doesn't have anything, Middle Eastern twist to it. It feels super smooth, as compared to this. This one seemed like maybe around 80% similar to Good Girl, even after one whole year of maceration, whilst this one you can immediately get that Good Girl vibes. To be on the safer side and not wait too long to macerate before you get the Good Girl vibes, I think you should go for Bint as compared to Kima. The next pair are going to be Eternal Max by Paris Corner and then Silk Mood by Zaafaran. I was just testing out a lot of fragrances and chanced upon this fragrance, and the bottle seemed quite elegant. I picked it up and realized it's something that I already have in my collection, and that was going to be Eternal Max. They smell so much alike. To me, Eternal Max feels a little gourmand as compared to Silk Mood. This one feels a little more creamy. There is some creaminess to it. They are both very creamy fragrances, but I feel Silk Mood is a little more creamy as compared to Eternal Max. This one feels musky, fresh, clean. It also has a creaminess, like very creamy, but I feel this one is just a little more creamier as compared to this. They are both very amazing fragrances. This is my second bottle of Eternal Max. I love them both. The only downside I find about Silk Mood is the fact that it's so creamy to the extent that it feels slightly nauseating. Whilst in Eternal Max, I don't get that, it doesn't nauseate me, but there's something, because of that heavy creaminess Silk Mood has, it feels slightly nauseating. So if you're not into super thick creamy fragrances which you feel are going to be nauseating, then I think you should stick to Eternal Max by Paris Corner, and that is going to be my personal preference. The next two fragrances are going to be Isha Gold by Lattafa and then Ameer Al Noble also by Lattafa. These are both reported to be dupes of Rosendo Matto number 5. It was when Ameer came out that I got to know of a house called Rosendo Matto, and then I think some few months later Isha Gold came out, and I could immediately get a resemblance between this one and then Ameer Al Noble. They are very beautiful, just that this one is much more intense, much more spicy, whilst this one seemed a little more balsamic. To me, these two fragrances are a classic case of fragrances smelling alike, but one takes a resonance direction whilst one takes a balsamic direction. Isha Gold I find a little more intense, much more thicker, whilst this one is a little more wearable to someone who is quite new to thick, rich, ambery, suede fragrances. That is what essentially these fragrances are. I guess for like this one is much more wearable. To me personally, my preference is going to be Isha Gold because I find it much more unique. There is something about it, which requires some sort of trained nose to be able to appreciate it. That rubber touch is not for everybody. That smoky nuance is not for everybody. It is less intense when it comes to Ameer. You get a little of that, but it's so much refined, Not that Isha Gold is not refined. It is very much a refined fragrance. However, Ameer seemed much more likable, whilst Isha Gold seemed a little more polarizing with that, bent rubber touch to it. It might not be for everyone, but personally, my preference is going to be Isha Gold. Isha Gold feels better to me in terms of longevity, potency, scent profile, which is much more intense. It feels better to me because I find it quite unique. So for that matter, I would say Isha Gold is a better alternative, whilst this one is the much more wearable alternative. And the last pair of fragrances I'm going to talk about are going to be Reyna by Alhambra and then Anam Gold by Lattafa. Anam Gold is a fragrance I have already utilized a full bottle in the past, just a couple of months ago. I love that fragrance. It gives me the same vibes as Reyna. Both fragrances have been compared to Parfum de Malice or Rihanna. I love them both. However, I think, you know, I've said this one before, it's not a secret. My preference is going to be Reyna by Alhambra, just because it has a very bright, citric, you know, likable opening as compared to Anam Gold, which feels a little more intense, a little more polarizing in a way. I didn't finish Anam Gold because I wanted to get rid of it, but because I just loved it, you know. But when I picked up Reyna by Alhambra, I realized it has a little more of a superior quality as compared to Anam Gold. Anam Gold comes across as a bit, you know, synthetic smelling, whilst this one doesn't come across as synthetic smelling to me at all. Anam Gold also has a smoky nuance to it, whilst I don't find that in Reyna. This one feels so much smoother, so much mass appealing as compared to Anam Gold, you know. So to me, I think Anam Gold is probably a blend of Rihanna and something else, or maybe Lattafa decided to put a twist on it. Whilst when it comes to Reyna, it's very mass appealing. It doesn't have any polarizing nuance or aspect to it. It feels very Western, whilst Anam Gold feels slightly, you know, or has a little bit of a Middle Eastern twist to it, and that is the difference I find between those two fragrances. So to me, or in my opinion, I would say just go for Reyna. It is much more smoother, much more mass appealing, and I prefer that Mandarin orange bergamot, you know, citric opening that this one has, you know, and it's maintained throughout the life of the fragrance. That is all I have for you today, and I hope this video found you well. Please do not forget to give this video a thumbs up. I would truly appreciate that. Thank you so much, and I hope to see you in my next one. Take care. Bye bye.